The First World War, when money went to war and never came home. One. War was declared, on balance sheets. World War I was not merely trench warfare and artillery barrages. It was also a global financial war waged in the vaults of central banks and the smoke-filled offices of transnational financiers. The soldiers spilled blood, the bankers tallied ledgers. Funding a war of this magnitude was not feasible through traditional reserves. Once empires chose war, they simultaneously chose historic debt. Initially, leaders believed the war would be short and affordable. By late 1914, that illusion had exploded. Massive daily expenditures, 10 million marks for Germany, 2.5 million pounds for Britain, devoured budgets at unprecedented speed. Footnote: World War I marked the first time governments openly waged war with debt as their primary weapon. 2. The gold standard, first casualty of war. In 1914, Europe's financial system was still chained to the gold standard. Nations promised currency convertibility to gold, which gave public confidence, but strangled governments' ability to print freely. Once the cost of war escalated, all major powers suspended gold convertibility. The result, fiat currency was born. Money became a state promise rather than a metal claim. That quiet pivot rewired the financial world. Once untethered from gold, nations realized they could print and borrow with impunity. And they never looked back. Footnote: Abandoning gold during World War I was the genesis of modern fiat currency, monetary liberation with long-term consequences. 3. Patriotic propaganda and the bond pyramid. Germany, blockaded and cut off from international capital, turned inward. The state orchestrated massive domestic bond drives, selling war loans to its own citizens. The strategy? Guilt, pride, posters, and promises of future repayment. Over 100 billion marks were raised. But after defeat, those bonds were worthless. Savings evaporated. Disillusionment followed. Britain, in contrast, leveraged the City of London and, crucially, Wall Street. American banks, especially J.P. Morgan and Company, became the credit engine of the Allies. By 1917, Wall Street had already bankrolled the war long before America joined it. Footnote: Germany bet on patriotism, Britain bet on Wall Street. Only one strategy cashed out. 4. The American century was written in loans. The United States began the war as a neutral debtor nation. By its end, it was the world's leading creditor. American banks earned millions arranging Allied loans. France, though weakened and wary, also tapped U.S. credit. After the war, this dependency created political friction, especially when debt repayments came due. While Europe burned money in war, America accumulated assets and gold. When the dust settled, Wall Street, not the Western Front, emerged as the true victor. Footnote: The financial shift of World War I vaulted America from economic apprentice to global master. 5. Russia, a financial collapse masquerading as revolution. Russia's financial system cracked under the weight of war. Despite impressive gold reserves, its underdeveloped banking sector, inflationary pressures, and military failures undermined public trust. Borrowing from France temporarily delayed collapse, but by 1917 the ruble was effectively broken. The revolution wasn't purely ideological, it was also economic. When the currency failed, the regime followed. This was not theory. It was arithmetic. Footnote: The fall of the Russian Empire was as much about collapsing rubles as collapsing czars. 6. Aftermath: The numbers were worse than the trenches. The total war bill was staggering, $140 billion by the Allies, $60 billion by the Central Powers. These figures dwarfed national incomes. Gold reserves were drained. The old financial system, built on metallic credibility, was reduced to paper promises and inflationary chaos. Germany entered hyperinflation, where bread cost billions of marks. The rich hedged their losses. The poor wheeled them in barrows. Footnote: World War I financially destroyed Europe not only through combat but through math no nation could balance. 7. Reparations and financial fantasy. Post-war settlements, especially the Treaty of Versailles, demanded Germany pay 132 billion gold marks in reparations. The demand was political theater masquerading as accounting. Germany could not pay. Attempts to do so triggered runaway printing and the infamous 1923 hyperinflation. The result, economic despair that would fuel fascism. Financial humiliation bred political extremism. Footnote: The Weimar hyperinflation wasn't just a tragedy, it was a planned impossibility. 8. Britain's self-inflicted wound, gold standard revival. In 1925, Britain attempted to restore the gold standard at pre-war parity. This was nostalgia, not policy. The economy was hollowed out, industrial output was down, and the debts were unpayable. Reinstating the pound's former value caused deflation and mass unemployment. It was a catastrophic miscalculation, championed by those still chasing imperial illusions. Footnote: Britain tried to turn back time with the gold standard, and economically face-planted. 9. America's circular loans, the Dawes and Young plans. Post-war U.S. loans flowed to Germany, which used them to pay reparations to France and Britain, who used those payments to pay back U.S. war debts. This circular credit system created the illusion of stability. When the Great Depression hit, the entire cycle collapsed. Nothing was sustainable. It was a closed loop with no engine. Footnote: Interwar economics were built on a financial hamster wheel powered by borrowed hope. 10. The financial legacy is still charging interest. World War I proved that modern states could finance total war by detaching money from reality. Propaganda replaced gold. Patriotism masked inflation. Bond markets became weaponized. These tactics were not abandoned after 1918, they became standard operating procedure. Every major financial crisis since, from 1970 stagflation to the 2008 crash, carries echoes of 1914. When officials insist everything is temporary, history teaches that it rarely is. Footnote: The tools of financial war invented in World War I were never shelved, they were refined. 11. The lesson is not in the trenches, it's in the ledgers. The global order post-World War I was shaped not just by treaties and battles, but by economic manipulation. The wealthy were shielded. The middle class was gutted. Currency was devalued, promises broken, and illusions sustained, all under the guise of economic policy. Financial power displaced military power. The First World War did not just redraw borders, it rewrote the rules of money. Footnote: The true battlefield of the 20th century was financial, and it's still active today.